Well, it's Q&A time again. Gosh, didn't we get a huge number of questions from you all? So this time we are splitting it into two. So please, if your question wasn't answered in this one, then do look out for the second one, which should be within the next week or so. It's just there are so many to get through and I don't want to disappoint people. So that is what we're doing, 2 lots of these. Let's get started. So somebody said, "Hi Rosie, what is your favourite perfume on a plant?" And I thought about this and I thought, well, at different times in the year you get different types of perfume, but one of my most favourite is Maianthemum racemosum. Maianthemum racemosum is a beautiful plant and it comes out in the spring. It's a woodlander. It's just got that fantastic soft sweet scent, and that's one of my favourite ones. Hi Rosie, I had some foxglove plants on their first year last summer. We had a brutal winter here in Zone 6A, Ohio. None of them returned. I did compost and leaf mulch this area. Okay, well, sometimes plants just don't like areas, and you know, sometimes it's better to look at them in someone else's garden somewhere else and admire them. But if you really want to try with the foxgloves, and remember they're biennials, then it might be worth it if you've got somewhere to be able to keep them inside. Put them into grow them on from seed, prick them out, put them into bigger containers, get them growing nicely, overwinter them inside, and then in the spring put them out into the garden so that they can get established and off they will go and flower. And then once they've flowered, allow them to self-seed around. And quite often with things like this, you might find that they grow better from being self-seeded plants than from actually being plants that you put in to try and get them to flower the next year. I hope that helps you. Right. Hello Rosie, I've managed to germinate some Alliums seeds. I'd forgotten about them, to be honest. Put them in a seed tray about a month ago. Wondering what the best way is to grow them on to flowering size. Now, what you have to remember is the Allium seeds they germinate very, very quickly. But for them to get from a tiny little seed like this to a bulb about this size that is a flowering size bulb will probably take them 2 to 3 years. So that's one thing. Also, you won't need all of those. However, if you want to try them and you want to grow them on, you can either try them in a container, but in the ground is certainly the best way. So if you've got an empty veg plot, for instance, or part of a veg plot that you don't use very much, then do some lines, drills, and just put some seed in those and allow them to mature. It'll take a couple of years, and then when they're much bigger and they start flowering, you can move them into the beds where you want them. So that's one way of doing it. Or go and put them into the garden where you're actually going to want them to grow in little clumps, and then just be aware that they are there. Don't hoe them out, otherwise that's not going to be any good to your seedlings. Have fun with them. And of course, if you are interested in propagation and learning how to propagate plants, then do take a look at our propagation course. This will be on a QR code or a link below, and it just will give you real help and show you how to get the best out of propagating plants in your garden. I have a skimmia. The leaves are the same colour as the flowers. Lost all their colour, but do not fall off. The new leaf growth from the top is good and quite lush. I feed them. I don't know what has happened. So basically, I would always say if the flowers' heads are not dropping off, then cut them off. You're not going to cause any harm. And also, skimmias actually are better if you do give them a little bit of a prune. So once they've finished flowering, prune them down, and then they will come back with a better shape. So that is always good maintenance with your skimmias. This one said, yes please, I'm struggling to get something to grow underneath 2 yew trees. I manure it, etc. Planted sweet woodruff and lamium, but wanted something taller for further back, where of course it's even shadier. Okay, so I have my go-to plants for under yews, and those tend to be cyclamen, and they tend to be the cyclamen coum and the cyclamen hederifolium. Now I know they're lower, but they will go in that further back bit, and they will be out at a different time from your other plant material, so you will see them because they are autumn and early spring, so they are worth doing. but something slightly taller is quite difficult in that sort of area. You might try one of the Cypridium orchids because they will take drier and shadier spots. That's about the only thing, and maybe the odd dry shade loving fern. Other than that, it's quite difficult underneath the yew because they will take all the moisture that they can, and they're really quite greedy. So the more you add manure to that area, the more the yew's roots are coming up to get that food. So you're actually not doing the soil any good by doing that. So try some cyclamen. I know it's not as tall as you wanted, and maybe some of the Cypridium orchids would be an idea for you. Hello Rosie, I made the Chelsea chop with my Napita, etc. Thank you, it's really good. The flowering of my crab tree Royal Beauty has declined considerably. I cut it back heavily at the end of March, hasn't really, because it was crawling around on the floor, and it's maybe why there is vigour is less and it's not flowering as well. It's in a 90-litre container, south facing balcony. Once the trees have their leaves and it gets between full sun from 10 a.m. till 2, so that's quite good a length of time, can I do something to encourage flowering? So, and you're in Germany, that's absolutely fine. So you need to be thinking about feeding it with a high potash feed. Potash is what plants require for their thing and for producing flower. So the one thing I would say with this is that you need to be feeding regularly in a container, especially for something like this, which is a crab apple. So sulfate of potash is a really good standard feed that you can add, but also then you need to use something which is a much more basic level type of feed, and something like maxi crop of seaweed food is very, very good for that, and that you would use as a liquid feed. And you want to be thinking of doing that through the season, because obviously it's not getting masses of sunlight, so it's not producing as much of its own natural food, so you need to help it because it's in a container. So try giving it a bit more food. Hi Rosie, I'm in USDA Zone 8B, Southern Oregon, have a mature clematis that grows to 2 meters. Our deck above had to be replaced and the clematis is now roughly half a meter under the deck. Should I move it or have it grow forward and then start to climb? I was thinking moving is a better choice, but when's the best time to do it? It's in full sun from noon and our lovely spring weather will give way to 35 degrees centigrade for the entire summer. This is not the time of year for you to be thinking about moving that clematis. It does not want to be done in the summer. It can be done in the early spring, it can be done in the autumn. So I would just allow it to grow however it grows at the moment and then move it in the autumn so that you get a much better plant for the following year and you can train it in a much better way. But don't think about moving it when you're going to get such extreme temperatures. Hi Rosie, do you foresee the plant nursery industry producing more dwarf varieties of well-known herbaceous perennials in the future? Well, this is one of those conundrums whereby the plant breeders are breeding for dwarfness because the dwarfer plants fit on the Danish trolleys, therefore you can get more on a trolley. It makes economic sense. However, that's not necessarily what the gardener wants, because the gardeners still want tall plants. And the only way that you're going to get tall plants is by going to specialist nurseries. The small specialist nurseries will still have your beautiful middle and tall plants available for sale. So that's one way of doing it. You will always find those plants there. But I think, yes, there is still this way that they are going to producing more slightly shorter plants, just because of the commerce of transporting plant material. The more you can get in a trolley, the better it is. Hi Rosie, could you please recommend a climber for full shade, something to underplant it with? They will be grown in a 50 centimetre pot in a small courtyard in Liverpool. Okay, so I would always go for Akebia as a shade-loving climber. It's a really beautiful climber. It grows very, very well. It grows in a container perfectly. And any of the Akebia varieties are worth looking at. So that's one genus that I'll go for. And then to underplant it, because this is in a shady area, then look at something like the Tiarellas. There are some beautiful Tiarellas out there. They will look stunning at the base of an Akebia, and that combination will work really well. Have fun, enjoy looking for them. Hi Rose, just wondering if you have a pet safe remedy for poison ivy and such. Someone recommended I should use full strength pesticide and just apply dab with a paintbrush, but I'm curious on your thoughts. Right, so you want a herbicide, and let me just say at the moment you must be in the USA, because here in the UK we do not have poison ivy. Poison ivy is Toxicodendron, there you go, and that is a lot of family which when you touch the leaves you might get a rash on your hands, and we do not have those here in the UK. Now if you're going to use a herbicide on something to eradicate it, then the best thing to do is look at the label. And one of the things that you could use is glyphosate, and I'm sure you have that in the USA, but do read the instructions and always use it as per the instructions, please. This one, the first bit of your sentence doesn't make a lot of sense, I have to say, but Cupressus Goldcrest Wilma, you're asking whether to grow it, and it is one of those very lovely small growing medium height, so it's a slow growing medium height golden conifers. It is very much a conical form, going up to about 1.50 meters to 2 meters in height, doesn't make a wide spread. So it's one of these plants which can fit in to an area very, very easily, and you know it's a nice plant, but I'm not sure what your people in UK plant is all about, I'm sorry, but I know what the Cupressus is, and Wilma, as I say, is a very good form, good for smaller gardens. Hi Rosie, I'm currently going through the process of having the garden designed and landscaped. Lots of perennials want to keep, along with shrubs, and I'm wanting to, they've been in the ground for 3 years. Would they be okay to move in the next few months? If I keep them well watered before and after transplanting, should I cut them back at all once transplanted? Now, this is quite a difficult one because I know you want to be able to keep a lot of your perennials, etc. If you were in the UK, then we are in an early drought at the moment, and I can't foresee it raining. As long as you can water very well, and that means you need to be watering for at least 4 to 5 days before you actually want to be lifting these plants. The herbaceous perennials, cut them all down. That would be the best thing to do. Cut them all down, water them really well, take a big root ball out, and then I don't know whether you're going to container grow them or whether you're going to go and heel them into another space in the garden. What I can say is that if you dig out a trench, water a trench, and then put the plants all lined out in a trench in the ground, that is a far better way of keeping them going. You will always get the odd loss. That's just one of the things that will happen when you're transplanting at this time of the year. Late spring, early summer is not the best time of year for transplanting. Your shrubs and trees are going to have a real transplant shock, I have to say. You need to be, again, watering really well. You need to be digging a big root ball out with those. If you're putting them into containers, just make sure you keep them watered. And the key thing with all of this is make sure they go into the shade. The shadier you can keep them, the cooler you can keep them, the better chance you have of them surviving the transplant shock. I hope that helps, and I hope you get a really good garden with all of the work that you're going on to do. Hi Rosie, I'm hoping you can suggest some plants, perennial annual, that can handle being planted in small spaces. I've upcycled some old guttering pipe, created a border, and I want to plant in the open tops. Okay, so my suggestion for this was that you would always go for alpines. Alpines are happy, they don't get huge, they're happy in a small space. That's why they grow well in crevice gardens and that sort of things. So go and have a look at the alpines. They will work really well for you. Some of the sedums, some of the arabis, all of those types of things will work so much better than anything else. So go to the alpine section, look at alpines, and I think you'll find you have more success with those. How to keep the squirrels from digging up my dahlia tubers in pots and eating them. I put some wire on the top for now. Well, with squirrels, wire is definitely one of the better options if you can do that. The other thing is that perhaps you could also maybe put some sharp stones or gravel around there. They don't like going through that, but wire very much is the best way to do it. So either put the wire over the top and then hold it on. That is the best way of stopping them from getting in. Hi, could you tell me how deep the roots go on Saxifraga monarch, please? Thank you. Okay, so Saxifraga monarch, a lot like a lot of the other saxifrages, tend to be alpine plants, and they tend to have wiry and also fine roots, and a lot of those scrabble along and make a big distance. One or two go down, so they're more going to go width-wise than they are going to go depth-wise. I hope that helps you. Hi Rosie, I can never seem to get the spacing right on my plants when planting in the border. They always seem to end up too sparse or congested. Any tips? Thank you very much. Right, so this is a problem that a lot of people have. They put the plants in, they put them really close together. My general rule of thumb for when you have got your plants and you've got your pots is put your elbows tight against your waist, hold your hands in the pots like that, and place down at that spacing. You have 2 pots here, 1 pot there. That will grow in and make a nice clump within a year, within a season. If you're prepared to wait, then you can do it as a little bit looser, and then they would be there and there. So you would have the difference there of something that is, say, 18 inches, 45 centimeters in a triangle, so 3 plants in a triangle, or slightly wider, which will be nearer the 50 to 55 centimeters distance, but then those plants are probably ones which are growing a bit faster. So it does depend on the speed of growth of the plants. It depends on the age of the plants that you're putting in, and then also their eventual size. So you have to consider all of those. So if something grows 30 by 30, then it's very much this tight like this, because then they will be getting that 30 and they will join up quite nicely. And that is the best way to do it. You know, think about, tight for when they are smaller plants, a little bit more lax, and that way you will get a better spacing for all of your plants. I hope that helps you. Hello Rosie, what is your opinion on the rabbit manure? Is it true you can use it uncompost as a component of potting mix? That's a good one, because I've not heard of using rabbit manure a lot. I mean, you can go and collect it off the fields if you want, and then there must be somebody doing it commercially. It shouldn't be too strong, because basically rabbits are only eating vegetation, so therefore it probably will work quite well. You need it to be probably quite dried out so that you can then break it up and mix it in with your potting mix. That would be my suggestion. But if you have rabbits and you keep them and you have the manure, then why not use it? Or just use it, spread it straight out onto the beds. That's the best way of doing it, I would have thought. Is there a dwarf gunnera? I have an area in my bog garden for one, but not huge. BC, Canada, Zone 8. Okay, so there are dwarf gunnera, and a lot of the dwarf gunnera tend to be quite short. So they're only literally 20-25 centimeters in height. One of the best ones is Gunnera magellanica. And the leaf on that will get about 20-25, and then it has a flower on top as well. So maybe up to about, 14 inches, 35, 40 centimetres maybe in height, but that is one of the dwarf ones. If you want something a little bit bigger, then why not try Rheum Ace of Hearts, which is the ornamental rhubarb, which gives you just as good leaf structure, and that will get to somewhere around about 50 to 60 centimetres, somewhere just under 2 foot. So that's another option. Can a blue princess holly be trimmed into a conical shape? About 25 years old and 8 to 10 feet high. Now the answer to that is holly can be clipped, because you see holly used as holly hedges. People also topiary holly as well. So yes, you can, but it sounds as though this one may not have been pruned an awful lot, so you need to start very gently. Now they want to be pruned after flowering, and that is usually in the spring. So if we've gone past that point now, but next spring by all means you can prune it to the shape that you want it to, but don't go back too hard on it. Hi Rosie, would you explain different honeysuckle climbers relating to flowering and pruning times? Thank you. Okay, so there are all sorts of different honeysuckles out there. Some flower early and some flower later. The early flowering ones you prune after they've finished flowering. So that's the one thing. The late season flowering ones you prune in the spring because they flower on the new growth. So they flower in the autumn, you leave them there in the spring, early spring, you give them a prune, you get lovely new fresh foliage. That is what, and growth, and that is what they're going to flower from that year. I hope that helps you. Thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.